Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Hello, Namaskar. How are you, all of you? We are here to talk about the unit on language skills. And in the past 3 subunits, we have talked about various kinds of language skills. So, just to help you recall, we have talked about receptive skills and productive skills. So, I'm just trying to recap for you people. We discussed, looking at the process of communication, what receptive skills are, and we discussed that when we receive some information, the skills that are utilized are called receptive skills, and there are 2 receptive skills. Can you tell me what those receptive skills are? Yes, you are right. Listening and reading, because in listening, somebody else is speaking and you are receiving the information that is being sent. And similarly, in case of reading also, somebody has written something and you are reading, so you are again receiving some information. So the other kind of skill is called productive skill, right? So in productive skill, we discussed earlier that when you are producing some information, when you are producing some message, again, as we had discussed that there are some oral skills and some literacy skills. So there is one oral skill which is a productive skill, and what is that? Speaking. And the literacy skill is writing. And just to help you recap further, we had previously also discussed that certain languages exist only in the oral form and they do not exist in the written form. And therefore, the oral skills are primary, are more important. So we have on one hand this kind of a dichotomy that we have receptive skills and productive skills. On the other hand, we also have another dichotomy where we talk about oral skills and literacy or written skills, right? So we are working with these 2 dyads, so to say, and we are talking about 4 language skills. So in the previous 2 units, we have talked about all these concepts, and we discussed that when we are talking about language, there are several things which are very, very important in addition to the language skills, the 4 language skills, that is listening, speaking, reading and writing. We also discussed that grammar and vocabulary both play a very important role in learning a language. So you must have come across several people, particularly people who have never been to schools. They are able to use the language very effectively, efficiently. They are able to communicate very well. And they never have seemed to learn grammar or vocabulary the way you have learned for certain languages. Particularly if we talk about English, English is a second language to most of us in India. And when we have learnt English, we learnt it primarily when we went to school. So we have had a formal teaching for learning English language. And when we got that formal education, there was a lot of emphasis on learning the grammar and learning vocabulary. But if you look at several other people who speak your first language, let us say, not everybody is educated, not everybody has had an opportunity to go to school and study that language. So since we are in Gujarat, we may talk about this, that there are several people who speak Gujarati. So you may meet street vendors, you may have some helpers coming to your home who probably have never been educated and who have never been through a formal system of education having taught them grammar and vocabulary. But still, they are able to communicate themselves very well in English language, Gujarati language. They know the language very well. But still, in formal system of education, we lay a lot of emphasis on grammar and vocabulary. So let us begin the discussion on grammar and vocabulary, and there will be certain important points, there will be certain important junctures where I would need you people to think and respond. Maybe you will not be able to connect with me directly, but then you have to write your responses and you have to think about those questions which I am going to pose to you during the conversation today, during the discussion today. So I begin the subunit on grammar and vocabulary, teaching grammar and vocabulary. I begin teaching considering the fact that you people are going to be teachers in the future, or some of you might have had some experience of teaching, or some of you might even be teaching today. So the question that arises is, how do we teach grammar and vocabulary in the class? Now there are two components, as is very obvious. We have one section of grammar and another section of vocabulary. So I will be teaching or treating both these sections separately. I will be first taking up teaching of grammar. Now, a very important question. We often talk about grammar. We so many times say that we have learned the grammar, or we need to learn grammar of a language. Now, a very important question that I want all of you to answer. What do you understand by grammar? What is grammar? You may write down your answer, and then we will check whether what you have written is correct or not. Though I do not have any doubt, but then we need to be very sure about the term grammar. The second question, as is displayed on the screen, is how essential is grammar in language learning? So as I have already told you that there are several people who have never been formally taught grammar of any language. So a very pertinent question that arises is, how important is the knowledge of grammar in learning a language? I would put it in another words, is it necessary to learn grammar of a language to know the language? Can we learn a language without studying the grammar of a language? And then we come to the final question, which is integrated with the second question. Can grammar be actually taught or learned? And if so, how can we teach grammar? How can we learn grammar? So these are two very important questions. Is it essential? And if it is essential, how do we go about it? So here are a couple of definitions, as you can see on the screen. I have taken from some very important sources. One is from Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Grammar is the study of the classes of words, their inflections, and their functions and relations in the sentence. A study of what is to be preferred and what avoided in inflection. So it primarily talks about how words are connected, how words are inflected, how word endings are applied to words, and what are the preferable rules of a language. If you look at the definition given by Britannica, which is another very standard dictionary, it says that grammar, rules of a language governing the sounds. So Merriam-Webster primarily talks about words, but Britannica talks also about sounds, words, sentences, and other elements, as well as their combination and interpretation. The word grammar also denotes the study of these abstract features or a book presenting these rules. So we often talk about a book of grammar. So can you bring your grammar? So we are not talking about particularly grammar, but we are using it as an eponym where we are talking about a book of grammar. I will quickly change to shift your attention to Cambridge Dictionary, which defines grammar as the study or use of, okay, now see here, the study or use of the rules about how words change their form and combine with other words to make sentences. So the definition that has been given by Cambridge Dictionary is very, very precise, but it has some very, very important elements. First of all, it is talking about words and their relation to other words and the form which combine into sentences. Again, I would like to draw your attention to what is written in the brackets, the study or use of. Now, it is not merely the study of, but it is also use of. So, in a way, Cambridge Dictionary's definition, though it seems to be very short, combines a lot of elements which Merriam-Webster Dictionary has given and what Britannica has given, but it has a very, very wide scope. So, it is not merely limiting to the study, but it is also talking about use. It is also talking about words, their forms, their combinations, and sentences. Okay, so we will be looking at all these aspects and how exactly is grammar constituted and what do we mean by grammar. So there are several ways of teaching grammar. I think since you all have been educated through a formal education system in schools and in colleges, you would have encountered different ways grammar has been taught. So one very important thing, as I said in 2 slides back, what is the role of grammar in English language teaching? How important, how significant is learning of grammar when we are teaching any language? The second important point that we will be covering today is there are two prime ways in which grammar is taught. One is called a deductive method and the other is called inductive method. We will be looking at both these methods, how grammar can be taught to the students. We would also be trying to identify and locate how you have learned grammar. And is there a change, is there a difference in which the grammar is being taught these days? So we would also be taking a kind of a critical comparative analysis about any changes that have occurred in the classroom teaching practices of teaching grammar. We would also be simultaneously talking about the perceptions. What are the perceptions and is there any change in the perception or is there any need to change in the perceptions? Okay. And then I will be giving you some techniques of grammar practice. How can be grammar taught? What are the considerations? What are the constraints? What are the factors that we will be looking at when we are talking about teaching grammar, practicing grammar, etc. Okay, so ready to go on the roller coaster ride? Okay, here I go. So as I said, we will be talking about approaches to teaching grammar. So there are 3 approaches to teaching grammar: deductive approach, inductive approach, and functional approach. Deductive approach is a traditionally used approach. Let me take you through a detailed discussion on each aspect. Deductive approach is a rule-driven approach. There are certain advantages and disadvantages, but before I go into those, let me tell you what a deductive approach is. A deductive approach is where the teacher who decides what has to be taught to the students and accordingly teacher specifies certain rules that these are the rules. For example, suppose the teacher wishes to teach you simple past form. So the teacher would say that you have to use the second form of the verb where you have to attach d or ed to the verb, and the teacher then gives you examples. So the rule has been given and the teacher then goes on to give you some examples. The rule is add d or ed at the end of the verb and the examples will be walk, walked, race, raced, talk, talked. Now the students learn that when you have to create past tense and when you have to create a sentence in the past, you have to follow this rule. So the teacher might give you an example, I walk in the park, and the teacher might ask you to convert it into simple past. So what you would be required to do? Convert the verb. The verb is walk. So what the students will do? I walked in the park. I talk with my friends. Converted into simple past, the students will say, I talked with my friends. So there is a rule that has been given and an example has been given, and then the students are asked to practice that example so that they understand the rule completely. That is a deductive teaching approach. Now, there are several advantages, as you can see. It's time saving because it takes you directly to the point. What is the rule that you are trying to teach? You understand it, you give it very clearly. It directly teaches the students what is required to be learned. And learners who are very good with analytical styles learn such rules very fast and learn to apply them also very fast. But anything that has advantages also has certain disadvantages. So the disadvantages are, students are sometimes unable to comprehend how to apply these rules in real life. What is the significance? What is the application? What is the use? They understand the grammatical rule, but they fail to apply in real life usage. It sometimes becomes too boring because you are asked to learn so many rules. The learners resist learning so many rules. You know, young learners, they don't want to learn rules, they want to learn exceptions. And it is the teacher who is continuously teaching, because as I said in the beginning, it said the teacher decides what rules have to be taught on a particular day. So the entire thing is being done by the teacher on the blackboard, and there is no participation from the learners. And you know very well, to learn something, you have to do it. Without doing, you don't learn. But in a deductive approach, the learners have a very limited role. The center stage is occupied by the teacher, and the learners do not get many opportunities to apply or to practice what has been taught by the teachers. And students sometimes assume that whatever has been taught, that is sufficient. So they start focusing things with respect to taking examinations, that if we learn these many rules and if we learn these many examples, I think that will be sufficient. And that is why we find that though there are very good advantages of following the deductive method of teaching grammar, there are also certain disadvantages. So I am here showing you an example which I think several of you can relate to. So teacher teaches, these are nouns, these are verbs, these are adjectives, these are complete sentences. So for example, the teacher keeps giving you examples. So while teaching nouns, the teacher will give you that there is a definition. Can you define nouns? Yes, correct. Names of person, place or thing. So now when you identify nouns, so a sentence will be given and you are asked to identify nouns, you will be able to identify them. Then the teacher will teach you what a singular means and what plural means. Then you will be given examples of that. What are common nouns? What are proper nouns? Examples followed by the definition. What are possessive nouns? There will be certain rules and then there will be examples. What are abstract nouns? So you will be given complete details about one particular aspect of grammar, beginning with identification, teaching about various subparts, categories, etc. Same thing if you find identifying verbs, linking verbs, helping verbs, tenses, subject-verb agreement. I think all of you have followed this kind of a course and you would be very well able to relate to how grammar is taught in schools. I am now going to move to teaching grammar inductively. These two approaches are opposite of each other. While in deductive teaching, you have the rules followed by examples, and the teacher teaches the rules and helps the student with the examples. Inductive teaching is exactly the reverse. There will be certain sentences that the teacher presents to the students, and then the teacher asks the students what rules can the students construct on basis of the examples that are given. Okay, so in deductive, rules comes first followed by examples, but in inductive approach, there are sentences, there are examples, and from those examples, rules have to be derived. Now, the rule that students derive, they have to test their rules by creating more sentences and verifying whether the rule that they have created is correct. They can test it against other examples. They can test it, compare it with other students and try to find that whether the rule that they have come up with is correct or not. If they find that there are any modifications required, if they find that there are certain problems in their rules, they can modify their rules and make necessary changes. And then the final rules the students have to apply to their own usage. They have to make use of the rules that they have applied. To give you an example of teaching grammar, sentences are given. The students are asked to notice the grammar item that has been presented. They are asked to understand the form of the structure, derive their own rules, practice new language items, and then use these grammatical items. Now my question to you. You have studied deductive approach, you have also studied inductive approach. Which approach do you think you were taught grammar with? When you were a student, were you taught grammar deductively or were you taught grammar inductively? My second question to you. Do you think that you have been able to learn grammar very well? Do you think you have been able to learn grammar very well? You know English grammar very well. My third question to you is, are you able to use the grammar that you have learned in real life? Has that teaching of grammar enabled you to use these rules of grammar in constructing sentences and in using in real life? So these are my three questions. Which method has been followed? Have you been able to learn grammar? And following what you have been taught, have you become equipped as user of English language? Are you able to speak, read, write, and understand English very well? So I'm giving you a minute to share, to note down your experiences, note down your perceptions and views before we move on. Okay. So the next way of teaching is called the functional approach to teaching grammar. We have already taught deductive approach and inductive approach. Now I am talking about the functional approach to teaching grammar. The functional approach to teaching grammar assumes that language is a social process and human beings use language for the purpose of socialization. They use language so that they are able to interact with other people and form social groups. So the purpose of language is performance. The purpose of language is to communicate. So language exists in our society because it has a very specific purpose of facilitating communication, performance. When we are talking about performance, when we are talking about doing communication, we are actually shifting our focus from knowing to doing. Because in deductive approach, there was complete focus on knowing the rules of grammar. To a certain extent, even the inductive approach focused on knowing the rules of grammar, though it applied them to usage also. But the functional approach is quite different from the other two previous approaches because it completely focuses on doing aspect of the language, where you have to learn how to perform and how to communicate. Though both of them are verbs, right? Performance and communication, both are verbs. So when you are talking about functional approach, the focus is on doing rather than on knowing. So you have to understand the key features of the language, but those key features not merely involve the rules of grammar, but they also involve rules of performance. How do you understand the rules of performance? There has to be a connection between the meaning, the function, and the usage. The three basic functions of language in the functional approach are conceptual function, which deals with the meaning, the understanding of the concept. Communicative function, which deals with the use of language for various oral and written purposes. And expressive function, which deals with expressing yourself. So as I just discussed, the functional approach proceeds in 5 steps. First one is presentation of language items, understanding what the language is doing, comprehending, finding an explanation what is happening, but more importantly, if you look 4 and 5 focus on practice and communicative expression. The main purpose of teaching language through functional approach is to enable the students to move towards step 4 and 5, where they have to practice language and try to implement it in the communicative expression. Now, how to teach grammar? Whenever you are talking about teaching grammar, you have to present new grammatical rules. The first very important thing, so if I begin from the top, the first thing that any teacher has to keep in mind is the requirement of the learners. What are the requirements? What is their age? What is the level in which they are studying? What are their specific needs or requirements? And then present certain rules of grammar. Show that these rules exist within a structure. Try to actively involve the student in the process of learning, because when the students get actively involved in the process of learning, learning improves. Try to present all these rules in some meaningful context so that the students are able to understand how a rule actually functions in real life situation. Help the students to ask questions. Help the students to construct their own concepts. Help the students to clarify their doubts. And when you find that the students have learned and imbibed the rules of grammar and also have learned how to apply these rules in real life usage, one can be ready to move on to presenting another new grammatical structure. A little bit more about this. How do you select and grade items that are to be presented? So as you can see in the center, we have function of language. So the first thing that we always have to keep in mind is what is the function that language is performing for us. And the second thing that you have to keep in mind is how frequently are those linguistic items coming up. So for example, you decide that you have to teach students interrogative. But then you start thinking about embedded questions in indirect speech. But there would be very few circumstances where you would need embedded questions. You would need to teach them yes-no questions, WH questions more frequently. They are used more frequently than embedded questions. So we would have to see what comes first, what is the student age, what is the student level, what is their prior knowledge. So suppose you have to teach them embedded question, but before you reach embedded question, you have to teach them how interrogatives are constructed. So on the other side, you have student objectives, teacher objectives, school objectives, and accordingly you can function, and you have to keep all those parameters in mind when you will be selecting and grading items that you will have to present to your students. Okay, now first we talked about presenting new grammar items, then we talked about how we select and grade items which have to be presented, and now I am coming to something which is very important, that is called grammar practice. Now there are several very important questions here. There are two very important criteria when we are talking about language: fluency and accuracy. I hope you understand the meaning of both these terms. Fluency means when you are able to use language with ease, with comfort. You are able to speak language, you are able to write in a particular language, that is called fluency. But fluency does not mean accuracy. You might have sometimes yourself found that somebody speaks English very fast, very impressively, but they make some grammatical mistakes. So accuracy is something different than fluency. Then there is a question of appropriacy of language use. The ultimate purpose of learning a language is to be able to communicate effectively. So are these aspects enabling us to communicate effectively in a language? Then your grammar practice also has to ensure that a deeper understanding in terms of meaning, in terms of forms, in terms of usage, in terms of structures is developed in the learner. So suppose, I think you might be aware of the concept of family of words. So when we use the word happy, for example, happy can enter into several kinds of formations. So you can have unhappy, you can similarly have happily, you can similarly have happiness. You can also have unhappily, right? So these are various kinds of forms, and with each form a new meaning comes in. So whenever you are talking about grammar practice, you have to ensure that students develop a deeper understanding into a particular concept and their input. So it is not simply putting something across to the students, it is not simply an input, but what have they taken in, what have they understood, have they been able to become capable of using it? And that will be possible only if you provide them meaningful context within which to practice a grammatical rule, and for that students' active involvement is necessary. So when you are talking about practicing a grammatical rule, all these aspects that I have mentioned here become very, very important in properly giving practice of any grammatical item. Okay, so I will be stopping here and I will be giving you again 1 minute to go back to the questions that you had written. The 3 questions I had asked you to write answers for. One was how important is grammar? One was how have you learnt grammar? Second was how important is learning grammar and has it enabled you to be effective communicator? Now I am adding a 4th question to that. Since the time you were students, have you seen any change that has come in teaching of grammar in a language? You can write down your answers and share your experiences with us. And now I will be moving on to the next topic. So I hope you have written your answers to all the 4 questions that I asked. So I think we are now ready to move on to the discussion on the second aspect, teaching vocabulary. Vocabulary. What is vocabulary? I am not presenting definitions of vocabulary because I know you all know the meaning of vocabulary since childhood. When we are talking about vocabulary, we mean words. Words are very important aspect of any language. If we do not know words in a particular language, we hesitate. We have certain ideas in our mind, but we do not know how to express them because we express our ideas only through vocabulary. So what becomes very important is how to learn and how to teach new words, and what is involved in teaching or learning of new vocabulary. So we will be looking at some of these important constraints and questions regarding teaching vocabulary. So very quickly, vocabulary is a set of familiar words that a person knows. We can divide vocabulary that we have into 2 aspects, active vocabulary and passive vocabulary. Active vocabulary is that vocabulary which we actively use while we are using language. So there might be certain words which we are very habitual of using when we are speaking or when we are writing. But when you read a text or when you listen to somebody speaking, those people might have written some words, used some words, spoken some words which you understand. But you as a person do not actively use those words, right? So we make a difference between active vocabulary and passive vocabulary. Passive vocabulary is that vocabulary which you can understand, which you recognize, but you do not use it. But active vocabulary means words which you recognize as well as use. Our passive vocabulary is much more vaster than our active vocabulary. So out of the entire words that we know, out of our entire vocabulary, only some part of our vocabulary is our active vocabulary. What is the importance of vocabulary? So look what several important researchers and critics have to say. Without grammar, very little can be conveyed. Without vocabulary, nothing can be conveyed. The more words you know, the more clearly and powerfully you will be able to think, and more ideas you will invite into your mind. There is also, in connection with this, what Wilfred Funk has said. There are 2 people known as Sapir and Wolf who believe that how we look at the world is shaped by our vocabulary, is shaped by our language. How we interpret and understand the world and how we ideate is dependent upon our vocabulary. When students travel, they don't carry grammar books with them. They carry dictionaries, is what Gratian, who happens to be one of the very important linguists of the recent times, he's still alive and he has something very, very important contribution he has made to the study of language, and he says that it is not grammar books that people carry with them when they travel. They carry their dictionaries because they would be able to understand meanings when they look up the meanings of the words in a dictionary. So that is the importance of vocabulary. So it is very vital that we all have a good amount of vocabulary. So how can we go about that? So we divide vocabulary, as I said, active and passive. Similarly, there are 3 tiers of our vocabulary. 3 tiers in the sense, the first tier, the lowermost tier, deals with words which are very basic, common, everyday. So right now I am speaking and most of the words that I have been saying, you would be able to understand most of them. They constitute the basic vocabulary. When we are young, we build our basic vocabulary. So our basic vocabulary consists of, let us say, around 2000 to 4000 words. Most of the school books, when they are teaching a target language, a particular language, first focus on building this basic familiar words. So there would be certain verbs, There would be certain nouns, certain adjectives. For example, the word like run, eat, drink, sleep, you would have learned very early in life. But there would be certain words you have never learned. For example, an adjective, exquisite. You may understand the meaning of exquisite, but you would have learnt it much later in life. You would not have learnt it as a tier 1 vocabulary. It might be a part of your passive vocabulary. It might not even be a part of your active vocabulary. The tier 2 words are words which are robust, high frequency words, but they are sometimes related to your fields of study. As you study further in your life, they are not necessarily related to your basic vocabulary like eat, sleep, drink, city, country, etc. They are basic words. But there would be words like atom, nucleus, glass, page. You would have learnt all those words while studying in school. So they constitute your tier 2 vocabulary. And then comes your tier 3 vocabulary. As I understand, most of you would be college students at least. Now, there would be certain words that you have recently got acquainted with. As part of your studies in this particular discipline, you would have been acquainted with certain set of words. Maybe only you would understand the meaning of those words. And therefore, they are considered to be the tier 3 vocabulary. So, when we are talking about ideology, the kind of meaning that you attribute to ideology, people may not be able to use the same kind of meaning. When we talk about exposition, you would understand the meaning of exposition, right? Resolution, catharsis, these are certain words that you would understand because you have learned those words as part of your tier 3 vocabulary. So if we simplify this kind of a distinction, we would say that that is primary vocabulary, tier 2 is secondary vocabulary, and tier 3 is tertiary vocabulary, right? So most of the common people who have very less opportunity of going to formal means of education, they would all have tier 1 vocabulary. They may not have so much of tier 2 vocabulary because words like certificate, admission, etc. would be in tier 2 vocabulary. But tier 3 vocabulary, very less people would have. Those who have been fortunate enough to come to higher education, only they would have tier 3 vocabulary. So what are the various types of vocabulary? As I was just telling you, active and passive vocabulary. Similarly, I am dividing with reference to the 4 language skills: listening, speaking, which is oral, reading and writing, which is literacy skill. So when we are talking about listening and speaking, we are primarily thinking about meaning and oral vocabulary, what we can say, the words that we can speak, the pronunciation, the meaning, the sound, etc. Speaking and writing, as both are productive skills, I'm linking it up with what we have studied earlier also. Speaking and writing both are productive skills, right? And therefore, that gives rise to your expressive vocabulary that enables you to express your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings. Reading and writing both are literacy skill, literate and written vocabulary. So what you can write, what you can read, what you can understand. On the other hand side, you have listening and reading, which are your receptive skills. So, oral skills on top and literacy skills on bottom, expressive skills on one side and receptive skills on the other. So, you can classify vocabulary on basis of various kinds of skills that you are employing, and accordingly, your perception of vocabulary would change, your interpretation of vocabulary would change, your usage of vocabulary would change. So, when we are talking about vocabulary, we are not merely talking in terms of meanings of words or spellings of words, but we are also talking in terms of sounds of the words, pronunciations of the words, as well as the various forms that they can enter into. Okay? So, how to teach or learn a new word? So, we identify 4 components of a word. A word can be learned in four aspects. The first aspect is the sound. Every word would have a unique pronunciation. For example, if we talk about the word atmosphere, you would hear different people pronouncing the word differently. But what is the correct pronunciation of the word? What are the sounds that we put together to form the word atmosphere? On the other side of the dyad, we have the meaning. Every word would have its meaning. What do you mean by the word atmosphere? Would its meaning change in different contexts? Can there be several synonyms of this word? Can we use environment as a synonym of atmosphere? And in what context can we use this word environment as a synonym? So synonyms also would be relevant to context. Then we have two other aspects, form and syntax. Every word has a different form. So we talked about, for example, we took the example of past tense earlier. So when we look at the word walk, we talked about its form, verb forms, walk, walked, walked, walking, or eat, ate, eaten, eating. So there are different forms of the words. And how are these words created in syntax, how they are connected in a syntax? So syntax is another aspect of a word. How can you use that word, that form of the word in syntax, in a sentence, in a connected speech? So when we are learning a word, we have to learn the word in all the four aspects. So as a teacher, you have to teach the word in all the four quadrants of the implication of a word. Now, how are the words acquired? How do we learn vocabulary? There are two prime ways of learning vocabulary. Most of you would have had glossary given in your book. When you used to study English, several times some words are introduced at the beginning of the chapter, or sometimes words are given at the end of the lesson as part of glossary. Teachers would have asked you to go through the glossary. Sometimes teachers give you list of words and use them in sentences. Find the meanings of the words from the dictionary and use them in your own sentences. So you are learning all of them deliberately. You are making a special effort to learn those words. You are trying to learn the word, its spelling, its meaning, its usage. You are learning it deliberately. But when you read a book, when you read newspaper, when you read a magazine, you are trying to understand the meaning of whatever is being told to you, whatever is being said. And sometime you come across new words, new expressions. And from the context, you try to guess the meaning of the word. Same thing happens when you are watching a movie, listening to a song. You are listening to an interview, let's say, or a debate. You come across some new meanings that have been said. And you try to guess the meaning of the word through the context. So what is happening is, you are learning new words, but you are not making any special effort in learning the meaning of the word. And it might happen that you come across one word repeatedly within a span of 2-3 days. And suddenly you realize that, oh, this is a new word I have learned, but you have neither written its spelling, nor looked up its meaning, nor created a sentence. That is incidental learning. So we make a distinction between deliberate learning and incidental learning. I don't know which one is better. You are a better judge. You tell me which kind of vocabulary is a better vocabulary learning. Do you learn better through deliberately learning words or incidentally learning words? Incidentally, we teachers often ask you people to read a lot of newspapers, read books. Think why we ask you to do that. You might find an answer there. Now, how do we teach vocabulary? So, to teach any linguistic item, we will be dividing it into 3 parts. First of all, presenting that item. Second will be practicing. And third, would be lexical or semantic development, in the sense that usage of the form and meaning of the word. So presentation, practice, and lexical or semantic development. So how do you present a lexical item? You can present any new word using one of all these aspects: visual aid, realia. What is realia now? As you can see on the other side, realia is real usage. So when you are bringing some newspaper item to the classroom, you are acquainting the students with how is the word used in reality. That is called realia. Mime. You all would know mime. Enacting, showing. Situation or expression, using it in a particular situation and explaining its meaning. Give its example, give certain synonyms and antonyms, ask the students to learn the meanings of those synonyms or antonyms. Or you may even talk about how the synonyms can be created, or ask the students to find synonyms and antonyms. Translate the word in another language. So these are several kinds of ways in which you can present new vocabulary, new items to the students. Practice and consolidation. Only presenting a new item is not sufficient. You need to give practice to the students. Repeat a particular item which you had presented. Help them learn how to use it in real life. So matching the columns, categorizing the words. So on the right hand side of your screen, you would be able to see certain ways in which we can practice. But on the left hand side, you would see that relationships. The first, there is a picture where you have cousin, friend, sister, helper, mother. They are all relationship. Steep, level, flat, sheer, smooth. That is the various kinds of surface. Ground. Strain, wobble, wiggle, falter, stress. Some of them might be new words for you, but they are related to each other. How are they related to each other? So you have to categorize the words and find connections. Choose the odd one out. Which is the odd one out? So you can use some such kind of an exercise where you can categorize the words, ask them to find the odd one out, try to create synonyms, try to create antonyms. And then a very important way of practicing, which you have been learning since childhood, is dictation. Dictation is very important in learning vocabulary, because in dictation you listen attentively. So you are able to connect the sound and the word and the spelling, because when you write, you are connecting the sound, the word, and the spelling. Answering certain questions where you can be asking the meanings of the words or usage of the words. Give them picture description. Give them some vocabulary items which they can use to describe a particular picture. Use some games or songs. On the other hand, you would see that I have presented a very, very popular game called Scramble. Make the students play such kind of games which will activate their vocabulary, which will initiate them into recalling words that they have learned. So now they will be using their active as well as passive vocabulary, and they would be able to consolidate their vocabulary. So the more practice and the more demands that you make on students' mind, the more creatively they would come out with the vocabulary and learn vocabulary in a better manner. Then lexical and semantic development. We classify words into two categories. The meanings of the words into two categories: denotative vocabulary and connotative. Every word has a dictionary meaning, a meaning that has been given to it, denoted. But on the other hand, words can have some implications. I'll take the word red. Red denotes a color. But red connotatively has certain meanings attributed to it. It can signify danger, it can signify passion, it can signify communism. So denotation is a color, but connotation is the meaning that is attached to the red color. So lexical and semantic development would mean making students aware of the denotative and connotative meaning of the word, make them write paragraphs and essays where they can actively employ their learning, make them read extensively. If you remember, we had talked about various kinds of reading when we were talking about receptive skills, and I had told you that reading can be of two kinds. If you remember, can you very quickly tell me what are the two kinds of reading? One is extensive, as mentioned here, and what is the other kind of reading, if you can tell me? That is intensive reading. Intensive reading is in-depth reading, but extensive reading that we are talking about here is reading widely, reading a lot, reading different kinds of texts. So when you do extensive reading, you will be able to come in contact with different kinds of words, and therefore your vocabulary will build. Lexical and semantic development will take place because the learner would learn not merely the denotative meaning of the word, but also the connotative meaning of the word, and that can all be done by extensive reading. And then communicative activities, that would mean that bring circumstances and situations where the student is able to employ his or her ability to communicate using certain words. Use the words in situations of expression. So these are various ways of building vocabulary. As you can see, listen and speak, read, and also write. For building vocabulary, you have to employ all the language skills. And I would like to conclude here. In this unit, we have talked about two aspects of teaching language: grammar and vocabulary. In both of them, we would have to keep our learners in focus, the level of learners, the requirements of learners, and we would have to base ourselves on three basic parameters: presenting a new item, practicing the new item, and enabling the user to use it into different kinds of situations so that a learner becomes equipped to express and communicate using the new item that you have presented, whether it is a grammatical item or whether it is a vocabulary item. When we were talking about teaching grammar, we also saw three approaches that are predominant in learning grammar: deductive approach, inductive approach, as well as the functional approach. Deductive approach is the traditional approach. For several years, deductive approach was applied, and gradually the teaching system moved towards inductive approach of teaching because it was felt that learner involvement enables them to learn language better. But nowadays, it is the functional teaching of grammar which is much more important, much more prominent than either inductive method of teaching grammar or deductive method of teaching grammar. But at the same time, I would like you to think, do you really need to teach grammar? There might be several people who know a language, but they do not know any rules of the language. So what is very important? Knowing the language or knowing the rules of the language? Think about it. Okay, thank you. So we are wrapping up the fourth subunit, and we will be continuing with the last and final unit later. Okay, bye-bye.
अध्यायः परः